Hello and welcome to this lesson on measuring crawl efficacy. This Python script is going to enable us to perform these efficacy calculations. For the calculations to take place, you must remember that crawl efficacy equals to the last modification date minus the last crawl date. And for us to have the last modification date and the last crawl dates, we need two input Excel files. One Excel file will contain a list of all of the URLs on your website along with their last crawl dates. The second Excel file will contain the list of all the URLs in your website along with their last modification dates. The last modification dates are embedded within the XML sitemap. So for example, for this website, this is the XML sitemap, and you can see the list of all of the URLs in the first column and the list of their last modification dates in the last column. So for us to get the last modification dates, we must perform an XML sitemap extraction, and I'll be showing you how to accomplish that. For us to get the last crawl dates for all of the URLs on the website, we need to use a crawler like Screaming Frog to crawl the website with the Inspect API enabled. So here is how to go about it. You go to Screaming Frog, you click on Configuration, click on API Access, and click on Search Console. You go to the URL Inspection tab, enable URL Inspection, go to the Search Analytics tab, ensure that you pick a sufficiently expanded date range so that you have more data when the inspect operation takes place. And then you go to account information and sign in with Google. And all you have to do here is to sign in to the Google account that has access to the Search Console property you want to inspect. That is the Search Console property of the website of interest to you. Once I click on that, the connection will take place. Now that the connection has taken place, I have selected my property and click OK. The same for you. You select your property here and you click OK. And that's it. All that is left is for you to input the URL of your website here and click Start. The crawl will execute and it's going to give you a list of all of the URLs on your website along with their last crawl dates. For you to see that information, you would have to find it in the Search Console tab of Screaming Frog. Here, I have already commenced the Inspect API crawl, and as you can see, here is the list of URLs on the website, and here is the column containing their last crawl dates. So you would have to export this information. Remember, it is within the Search Console tab of Screaming Frog. You would have to then export this information as an Excel file or as a Google Sheets file. It's better to export it directly as an Excel file. And once it is exported, you should ensure that all of the irrelevant columns are removed and there are no spaces in that Excel file. The only two columns you will need are the address column and the last crawl column. Then you go back to Google Colab and you will then upload that Excel file. Once it is uploaded, you will give it a corresponding name so that the name with which it is being referenced within the code is the same as the file that you uploaded. That is going to be the file that contains the list of addresses and their last crawl dates. As can be seen here, we've already imported our last crawl from GSC Excel file. Before the file was imported, we had to ensure that it contained no empty spaces or empty tabs so as to reduce the risk of error during code execution. The next Excel file we need as input is the last modification from xml.xlsx. For us to get this file, we would need to perform a sitemap extraction using a separate script. I named it annotated XML extractor because it is so properly annotated that you can understand what every single line of code was written to execute. All that it requires to work is you giving it the URL of your robots.txt file, and it's going to create two export CSV files for you. The first is named raw sitemap.csv, and this raw sitemap.csv is going to be cleaned out to ensure that there are no duplicates, and you would get a separate CSV file called clean sitemap.csv. It is this clean sitemap.csv file that you would download. You would clean it out to ensure that there are no empty spaces within it, there are no empty tabs within it, and once that is completed, you will then import it here and rename it so that the name of the file you import is going to be the same as the name with which it is being referenced on this line. So let's see how that would work. Let's click on runtime and run all. The execution has been completed, and as you can see, we have two output CSV files. One is named clean sitemap.csv, one is named raw sitemap.csv. And there is also a graph here that shows you the relationship between modification and publishing trends across different date ranges. So we see that publishing trends and content modification activity was relatively flat between July 2021 and July 2023, but from January 2024, the publishing activity spiked. All we would need to do now is to download this cleaned sitemap.csv file. We would then import it into a Google Sheets file for the sake of cleaning, and after it is cleaned, we would be able to use it in our crawl efficacy calculations. While we could retain all of these columns, we only need two main columns. We need the address column and we need the last modification column. This column named log has to be renamed because in the code, the column is named address. So let's rename it. Let's delete the other columns that we do not need. And let's ensure there are no empty tabs. Let's convert this into a filtered table so that we could search for blank spaces. Okay, so we have blank spaces at the bottom which also need to be eliminated. Now that all the blank spaces are eliminated, let's ensure that this last mod has to be the same as the name here, and that is the case. So we are good to go. We just have to rename the file so that the name here matches the name of the file that we are downloading. So I've copied the name with which it is going to be referenced, and now we are going to download it as an Excel file. It has been downloaded. We now have to import it into Google Colab. Click on the upload button, and that's it. It's been imported. And now that it's been imported, that is all we need. We've given the script the two required input files. We just have to ensure that before we run the code, that the file names here and here are the same as the names with which they are being referenced within the script. and at the end of that, all you do is click run and run all. You would get an output file named allcrawlefficacy.csv, and this output file is going to show you a table that compares the last modification dates and the last crawl dates, along with a table that shows you the time difference between both dates. And based on the time difference, you will be able to see for yourself what the crawl efficacy of your website looks like. To see the code in operation, let's now click on runtime and click on run all. And at the end of the operation, we can see this last crawl from gsc.xlsx has been turned into a data frame containing an address column and a last crawl column. Like I had said earlier, before you upload this Excel file, ensure that it contains no empty spaces, no empty tabs, and that it contains no NaN columns, that is none. When we scroll down, we see that the Excel file containing the addresses and their last modification date has also been turned into a second data frame. You can see the addresses, you can see the last modification dates. During execution, we now see a CSV called allcrawlefficacy.csv, and we see an earlier CSV called crawlefficacy.csv. And so those two CSV files are also present right now here, and they can be downloaded and reviewed. But within the code, we can also see a data frame that shows us our addresses, their last crawl dates, their last modification dates, and a final column that shows us the difference between the last crawl and the last modification dates, so that we could observe crawl efficacy for every single URL. For this product page, the crawl efficacy is 148 days, which means that there is a 148-day difference between the time when it was last crawled and when it was last modified. It was modified in the month of June, but it was last crawled in the month of January. So we can already see that we have some crawl efficacy issues with this website. And as we scroll down, we see other reference tables. So now let us observe by ourselves what our crawl efficacy.csv file will look like. And in case you are wondering what the difference is between allcrawlefficacy.csv and crawlefficacy.csv, the main difference between both of them is that in the second one, that is the allcrawlefficacy.csv, we have simply sorted out the sheet by worst values. So from worst to best, right? So now let us download one of these CSVs and upload it into Google Sheets to see what exactly it looks like. And we will then be able to submit a report to any stakeholder showing exactly what the crawl efficacy for this website looks like. Let's ensure that all columns have the same format. As we can see here, 148 days between when it was last modified and when it was last crawled. And we have some URLs that have been crawled 100 days after their last modification date. So Google is giving these pages a lot of attention, even though they were last modified a long time ago. And Google is not giving these sets of pages attention, even though they've been modified more recently. So that's what this code can help you achieve, and it improves your understanding of what crawl efficacy looks like for individual pages across your site. It helps you to understand the differences in page performance, especially when a page is losing its position on the search engine results page.